topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Powerful Business Strategies, where you will find out that everything you have ever learned about growing your business is wrong. Finally, a show where you'll learn the right way to grow your business by learning business and financial strategies that your competition isn't doing. And now, here is your host, President of Next Step CFO, Michael Barbarita. And joining Michael for today's show as an executive moderator is Chuki Obiyo.
This is Chuki, and I believe that gratitude is undefeated and growth is about the next step. So it is an honor for me to moderate today's discussion with my good friend, Michael. Michael, how are you?
Fantastic, Chuki. How do you apologize to the world that you had technical difficulties to get on the show by now? Well, thank you, Chuki. My name is Michael Barbarita, president of Next Step CFO, and Next Step CFO is a fractional CFO and strategic implementation firm. And our vision is to ensure overwhelmed business owners achieve the time freedom and consistent profits to build a legacy and live the life they desire. And our mission is Next Step CFO is dedicated to guiding small business owners to leveraging their time, exploding their profits, and build a meaningful legacy. And this show, Powerful Business Strategies, and our book of the same name is a step toward accomplishing that vision and mission. So with that, I'd like to hand it back to my co-author and moderator for the show, Chuki Obiyo.
Michael, thank you. And to address your question about the technical difficulties, I would just say, look, we are in the business of problem solving, and we just solved that. I mean, right? We solved it elegantly. So look, a quick disclaimer, Michael and I are both affiliated with a number of different organizations, and the business owners, the leaders that will join our roundtable discussion as part of this radio show moving forward will also be affiliated with their organizations. But the views expressed on this show are our own views based on our successful experiences. And my role as a fearless moderator for this radio show is just to ask the right questions to help you as a listener and to help me learn business and financial strategies that the competition isn't doing. And let's kick off with the first question. So look, Michael, the more I learn about your career story, the more inspired I am. Why don't you take a few minutes to just give us a walk down memory lane?
Great. Thank you, Chuki. So back in 1999, I just sold my business for I sold my second business successfully in 1999. That was back in the Stone Ages, by the way. My first business sold for multiple seven figures. And I got to tell you, I didn't think I could do no wrong. After owning and exiting two businesses, I just thought I had the keys to the business kingdom and that I could succeed at any business. So in all of this glory, without any experience in the medical profession whatsoever, after all, who needs that? I started an outpatient rehabilitation facility called Freedom Therapy Center. Now, in the successful businesses I owned, I implemented business strategies that my competition wasn't doing. For example, my first business was a ski specialty retail business, and we grew the company from $2.5 million to $8 million in 5 years. And a contributing factor to that growth was a strategy called a risk reversal, where the seller in the transaction takes most or all the risk. And one of the problems that the customer had in the ski industry is they never really knew if the ski they were being sold by some hotshot ski salesperson was the right ski for them. So what we did is we implemented what we called a ski guarantee, where we let the customer ski the ski 3 times. If it wasn't right for them, they could take it back and would refit them with a brand new pair. Now, Chuki, just so you understand, when a pair of bindings goes on a pair of skis, it depreciates substantially, not to mention when it gets skied on.
Wow.
Yeah. So my employees and managers, as a result of all that, thought I was, going crazy and out of my mind. But I knew there were no competitors that would do it. We sold 8,000 pairs of skis the first year we implemented it, a 25% increase, and only 8 came back.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, and the next year we sold 11,000 pair, and only 14 came back. Many business owners think that when you're taking a risk by implementing a risk reversal, that it's going to backfire. And I've never seen it backfire, to be honest with you. But then you fast forward to Freedom Therapy Center, where I must have taken these stupid pills or something, because I did exactly what my competition was doing. Marketing the doctors to get referrals, dropping off chocolate cakes as bribes to front office staffs to get to the doctors. And by the way, I gave away 2,000 cakes one year. I don't know. I'm almost embarrassed to say that. I offered services the exact same way my competition was doing. No risk reversals, no compelling offers, no strategic direction, no creativity, and no differentiation. And I was looking for customers who were anybody. And there were a bunch of anybodies that ended up really being nobody. And I'm a financial guy, so I know how to manage cash flow. But despite all that, we were incurring huge, enormous operating losses, and we were hemorrhaging cash.
Wow.
Every month. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Every month I was going into my savings to fund operating losses. And after a certain point, I promised myself I wouldn't put any more money into the company to fund operating losses. But like every business owner, I broke that promise, and I broke it twice. Thank God I wasn't married. I'd be under the pressure of being told to get a real job. I was staying up nights wondering what I was doing wrong. I was waking up in the middle of the night with cold sweats, worried about cash flow and customers I was losing every day. There were many Wednesdays when there was no money in the company bank account and the payroll due on Friday. Employees were looking for other jobs. They saw a sinking ship. People we owed money to were calling. There was personal liability galore. And then it ended. I fell on my face.
Incredible.
Have you ever fallen on your face?
Yes.
Did you stay down in the hope that no one would notice?
Wow.
Did you care more about what other people would think instead of what you could learn from this? Do you think I stayed down too long? Have you ever stayed down too long? Vendors, leasing companies, banks, they all had hitmen coming after me. My ego was shot. The guy who held the keys to the business kingdom, the guy who sold a business for multiple 7 figures, was facing his most difficult point that he thought he would ever face in a million years. But I learned 2 things. The first thing I learned is that after one falls on their face, the hardest step to take is the step after the fall.
Yes.
The next step. Yeah, the next step. And so 30 days after I closed Freedom Therapy Center, Next Step CFO was born. And the second thing I learned is you just can't keep doing what your competition is doing. And today, I come to you all and I ask you to ask yourself, are you doing the same thing that your competition is doing? Are you messaging the same way as your competition is messaging? Great service, years in business, lowest price. Do you want to change that? Because this show, Powerful Business Strategies, everything you ever learned about growing and building a business is wrong. And it's all about business strategies that your competition isn't doing. And that's what this show is all about. And I take it right back to you, Chuki. I can't hear you, Chuki.
Michael, I'm so inspired.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's interesting. One of the reasons why you couldn't hear me, I was lost in my thoughts, to be honest. Just digesting that career trajectory and the manifestation of that with Next Step CFO as your lessons learned, right? And the more I hear about that career story, Michael, the more inspired I am. And look, you and I have been collaborating for a while. And when I think of our professional networking across multiple industries with multiple business owners, the sense is that business owners are just under a lot of pressure. So, Michael, I've got a couple of questions for you related to this, just as we build out our conversation. So, when you think of how you reconnected with not doing what the competition was doing, right? How did you have the confidence to do that? Given all the pressures, right? The pressures of growing the business, managing the business, how did you have the confidence to really focus in on what the competition wasn't doing and come up with a unique set of strategies?
Well, I think you've heard of the 80-20 rule, Chuki. We wrote about it in our book.
Yes.
And for business, 80% of what you do, 20% of what you do generates 80% of the outcome, or
Correct.
in this case, or in many cases, 20% of what you do generates 80% of the revenue.
Yes.
So, one of the things I looked at specifically, what is it? Because if you look at things like all the things that business owners have to know, it's absolutely overwhelming. You could take all the different slices that we have to know, and then there's subcategories of the subcategories.
Yes.
I mean, in one particular case, like digital marketing, for example, there are all these things you have to know about social media. There's all these things you have to know about email. There's all these things you have to know about drip campaigns. And so what I tried to do is just break it down into that 20% that essentially generates 80% of the revenue. And so did it give me confidence? It was just a different approach. So because it was a different approach and it made sense to me, that gave me confidence. So it wasn't exactly that the way I went about it with the 80-20 rule gave me confidence. It was just breaking it down into what really important that gave me the confidence.
And to our listeners, I want to pick up on that point, Michael. To our listeners, that 80-20 concept is really powerful, and this applies across multiple endeavors and specific to business. Michael, just as you've pointed out, 20% of what a business owner does daily in their business is actually what translates to 80% of revenue impact. I'm fascinated by that, right? So to this point of the claim that we make as part of this show, everything that a business owner has learned about business is wrong, right? Michael, I want to get back to that, and I want to relate that to the 20% that business owners should really focus in on. So a big part of the challenge for a lot of business owners, you reference digital marketing, is marketing. How do you get the right message to the right prospects, whether those prospects are clients or customers, whether they transact on products or services? So to that point, right, Michael, I mean, what are things that we've learned about marketing that are wrong?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Chuki, because one of the things that I talked about at the end of my opening was what I call "I hope so" marketing. Yeah, and what "I hope so" marketing is, it's all of these little, I'm going to call it, whether it's taglines or sayings that the customer is saying to themselves, "Well, I hope so." In other words, if a customer is going to make a purchase and you're saying that you have the largest selection, well, if I'm going to make a purchase from you, I hope so. I hope you have the largest selection. if you're saying you're the most professional, I hope you're the most professional. You say we are of the highest quality. Well, my God, if you're a customer, why would you go to a place that doesn't offer high quality? So this is what we mean. And this is what, and years experience, lowest prices, honest and sincere, all of these things, the customer is saying to themselves, I hope so. And so one of the critical components of doing what your competition isn't doing, because your competition for the most part is utilizing I hope so marketing. They're talking about the largest selection. They're talking about the lowest prices. They're talking about the best service. They're talking about being the most convenient. They're talking about being in business for 40, 50, 60 years. Those are the things that they're talking about that everybody's talking about. So what we found in our research and in our businesses is that the way we separate ourselves from our competition, or one way that we separate ourselves and we're not doing what our competition is doing, is by utilizing something called the conversion formula.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the conversion formula is designed to convert prospects into sales. And I'll go over some of the just basic components of it. But this is something that we'll talk about in great detail in future shows for sure. Because the reason why everything most people have ever done in business is wrong is mostly centered around I hope so marketing and being tactical in their marketing versus strategic. And the conversion formula allows you to be strategic. And so
look,
yeah, go right ahead.
I'm really intrigued by that, Michael. And, sorry that the energy and the animation on this end is just based on the fact that there were a couple of things that you shared as part of that reflection that I'm really, truly motivated by. So this I hope so marketing, as you were just taking it step by step there, Michael, and I was just thinking of a lot of the websites, business websites that I've visited, even just like in the last 6 months, last year. And you're right. That's precisely how a lot of business owners present their products and services. It's, we're the cheapest this, or we've been in business for X number of years and we've got the largest selection there. And it's really interesting to kind of think about it that way. It's like, well, I hope so. I mean, why else would you be in business if you're the most expensive or you've got the least number of selection options? Wow. So I'm really intrigued by that. And I think that's a really profound point. And perhaps to a number of our listeners, I mean, what are your thoughts? Maybe it makes sense for a number of listeners just as an action item to look at their website, their business websites, their competitors' business websites, maybe even their social media pages, and just get a sense for whether they're doing a lot of the I hope so marketing that you reference. What are your thoughts related to that, Michael?
Yeah, no, it's very prevalent. And what it does, because everybody's marketing the same way,
yeah,
it gives the customer only one option to differentiate you from the competition, and that's price. And so everybody wonders why. See, if I talk to small business owners, they'll say price is the most important thing. But the reason why it's the most important thing is because we haven't given the customer any other reasons why they should do business with you. So it's that differentiation that's the critical component. And the conversion formula helps you be strategic in the sense that it helps you identify opportunities that your competition isn't doing.
Okay, so Michael, I mean, when you hear things like, oh, there's this conversion thingy, right? Again, I'm going to speak as
absolutely.
Business owners listen to this and like, oh, Michael's this great CEO, this great CFO mind, and he's saying things like conversion formulas and equations, and I'm just trying to keep the lights on for like the next, fiscal quarter, right? So conversion formula, what does that entail? And do I need, just again, speaking as though I'm one of these business owners listening here, it's, do I need to set aside marketing dollars for this? Do I need to set aside a lot of ad dollars for this? Give me a sense of.
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
Yeah, yep.
You might either redirect your current marketing dollars, or or you might set aside additional marketing dollars once you understand the formula.
Please, and
Yeah.
can you walk us through the formula? I would love to take some notes on this. Yep.
Be happy to. So, first of all, it's important to note that the conversion formula is exactly that. It's a formula that has to go in the exact order. If you take the formula out of order, it won't work for you.
Mm.
And so the formula starts with what we call the captivate, which is essentially the problem that the customer has and doesn't want. Now, let me explain something. If you're a painter, let's say, and you say the problem is that my customers want to know, the problem my customers have is they want to know what color paint to put in their interior into the bedroom.
Correct.
And the problem is every painter can solve that problem. So it has to be, you have to really think about either the problems with the industry as a whole, because that's really where I think you should start, but also problems specific to a customer's journey in deciding whether or not to buy.
Interesting.
So those are the things, and we have systems in place to get deep into that, so that you'll whether it's with us or somebody else, you'll be able to get really deep into understanding what the problem is. So that first step, the captivate, is really understanding the problem that the customer has and doesn't want. So then, and by the way, when you have a compelling problem that you present, it interrupts the customer. Okay, which is a very, very important point, because it's hard to get attention these days. And,
tell me about it.
Right, and that's why the first part of the formula is the captivate, because it interrupts the customer. Some people call it the catch line, or there's other terms that they use for it, but essentially we call it the captivate because it gets that attention. It interrupts the customer because the problem is something they need solved. And the second part of the formula we call fascinate. And the fascinate is the solution, your specific solution to the problem that the customer has and doesn't want. And it's something that the customer can't necessarily find somewhere else. But here's the interesting point. Even if they could find it somewhere else, even if the customer can find that problem somewhere else, that competitive business owner is not talking about it. You're the only one who's talking about it. Okay,
that's quite interesting. So that's part of what creates the competitive advantage.
That's correct. So in other words, 500 painters can offer, let's say the problem that the customer has and doesn't want is they're sick and tired of painters coming in with and making a mess and not cleaning up afterwards. Let's just say that's the problem. I'm not saying it is, but let's just, as an example, let's say that's the problem. And you offer a solution to that problem by making a specific claim that you guarantee that the house will look the same way when you leave as when you entered it.
Wow.
That will start to that scenario can potentially interrupt the customer, because that's a problem that might be taking place in the industry. So that's the key element, and those two components together, the captivate and fascinate, are called position of market dominance. And without that, you can never complete the rest of the formula.
Okay, I want to pick up on something you said.
Yep.
About just using that painter example. And we have quite a number of tradespeople that listen to this show, right? So people in the trades, painters, plumbers. And one of the things that they may be reflecting on is Michael describing an emotional problem?
Well, normally it is.
Interesting.
People make buying decisions emotionally and then back them up logically. So that they feel good about it.
Yeah.
But usually the decision is made emotionally, and we believe that the conversion formula, especially the first two components, which once again is the position of market dominance, we believe that those first two components can differentiate yourself from your competitors and can interrupt the customer.
Interesting. And when I hear that phrase, position of market dominance, it connects me back to something you said earlier, Michael, about this business owner and her team, or this business owner and his team. They've identified a problem in the industry that's got some emotional content, and they're addressing that problem in a way that the competition isn't addressing that problem. So just by the function of doing that, Michael, they've created this position where they could dominate, because in some ways they've set the terms of engagement. Is that part of why this becomes a position of market dominance?
Right. And the fact that, when I said earlier that it's difficult to get people's attention.
Yes.
Today. I mean, there's so many things. How many messages do you think? I mean, just this morning I got 100 emails. How many messages does the average business owner get bombarded with on a daily basis, and the average customer?
Yes.
And so there's got to be a way to differentiate ourselves, and we've seen this has worked time and time again, but you need to identify that problem, which is the key component and the key differentiator, and what's going to make it work or not. If you identify a problem that everybody can solve, and it's kind of commonplace that everybody can solve, like any painter can pick a color paint, then it's just that's not really the problem that the customer has. Whereas if you're going to make a mess of their house, that's a problem. If the industry is known for making messes of a house, then that's a problem, and they want to know the solution to that problem. They want to choose a vendor that's going to solve that.
Yeah, it is. It's remarkable, Michael, when you think about just some of the implications of what you've just shared, right? Just this idea of how you've kind of carved out this space in an industry, this space in the marketplace where you're dominating, right? As a small business owner, as a medium-sized business owner. Now, let's say a business owner gets that right. Let's say, and I took some notes on this, so they get the captivate right, they get the fascinate right. So they've interrupted, and now they've engaged these prospective customers, prospective clients that have that problem, right? What's next? Like what would be a good next step after that?
Right. So if you have an effective captivate and fascinate, now you've got their attention. Now you have the time to what we call the educate. So the third step in the process in the formula is to educate. And that educate, it could be a minute. Now you have a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to really go into detail on how you go about solving that problem. So, for example, after the painter explained that he'll leave the house in the same condition as he found it.
Yep.
Maybe he talks about wearing those booties. Maybe he talks about putting, if it's an interior paint job, putting how he puts a special plastic over the furniture.
Correct.
How they have super duper vacuums that'll clean up any lint or debris that they leave behind. So they go into that detail, so to speak. And so what the position of market dominance does, the captivate and the fascinate, is it allows you now that you've got the attention of the prospect, it allows you to now go into more detail as to how you go about solving that problem. So you still don't go into the great service and the lowest prices and the largest selection and all that kind of stuff. You don't bother going into that. But what you do focus on is how you specifically, in more detail, solve that particular problem.
That's really interesting. You know, one of the ways that I'm sort of processing this insight, Michael, and thank you, it's just a wealth of information, is it's almost like the captivate and the fascinate, you've kind of outlined a picture, and then the educate allows you to take that from like a regular HD picture to like an ultra HD picture, right? So you're adding more detail, more pixels to the picture.
Right. And, you know, it's about getting attention. If your captivate and fascinate works, then you'll have more time and you'll be able to go into more detail with your educate. And it doesn't have to be long. It could be a minute, could be a half a minute.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, or it could be, I've seen some successful educate portions of the conversion formula last 5 and 10, 15 minutes. So it's, yeah, it's, as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, I've seen some last for hours because you have that attention, and you've hit an emotional chord when you identify a problem and provide a recommended solution.
And I want to pick up on that last phrase, you've hit an emotional chord, and this allows you more time to build a trusted relationship with the prospect. So you've captivated, you've fascinated, and you've got the necessary time to educate. A lot of business owners, again, going back to your story, Michael, they'll say things like, well, look, I've got payroll in a couple of weeks and I've got to get my guys, again, just using the painter as an example, I've got to get paint jobs. Like I need to make offers. So give me a sense of what do you think should come next after we've sort of captivated, fascinated, and educated?
Well, here's the here it is. I think the most well, not the most important. The most important is the position of market dominance to captivate and fascinate. But the fourth component is as an offer, and your offer needs to be so compelling that the customer can't say no.
Yep.
And there are several components to a compelling offer, and you know, this is something that we'll definitely dive deep into, but in today's show, and it got shortened because of the technical difficulties that we had. But in today's show, I wanted to at least explain the conversion formula, which in review, once again, is captivate, which is identifying the problem that the customer has and doesn't want. Fascinate, which is the solution that they want that they can't find. And now that you've captivated and fascinated them, you now have the time to educate them. And that education should be about the problem, a little bit more detail on how you go about solving that problem. And then finally, the offer, which needs to be so compelling that the customer, client, prospect can't say no. And so we will go into more detail as to what makes up a compelling offer next time. But Chuki, I really appreciate I appreciate your patience dealing with the technical difficulties today.
Oh, no worries. Now, look, I got rewarded for that patience, to be honest with you, with this great sort of insights that you shared, right? I mean, Michael, look, I mean, let's continue to have more technical difficulties, especially if I walk away with like 8 pieces of insight, right? That is fascinating. Like I would get into that kind of a transaction. You know, it's funny, and I know we'll wrap up here in a minute. So it's really interesting. I mean, one of the things that maybe business owners didn't appreciate listening to this is when you listen to Powerful Business Strategies radio show, you may learn how to be a poet, right? Where you can rhyme your words in the best way, right? You could use words like captivate and fascinate and educate, and it all flows, right, Michael?
That's right. You got it. I never thought of it that way.
That's great. Look, as a recap, 2 takeaways for me from today's episode. 1, just a reconnection, Michael, with your career story. Very, very inspiring. And then 2, the concept of the conversion equation and the conversion formula. So thank you. In the next episode, I look forward to going a little bit deeper on some questions related to that. Sound good?
Excellent. So, Chuki, and one other thing I want to mention. So to get a copy of the book, Powerful Business Strategies, you can simply go to our website, www.nextstepcfo.net. It's totally complimentary. And until next Monday at noon Eastern time, for Chuki Obiyo, my name is Michael Barbarita. And remember, don't keep doing what your competition is doing.
You have been listening to Powerful Business Strategies, finding out that everything you ever learned about growing your business is wrong. Tune in next week and every week at noon Eastern Time on W4CY Radio with your host, Michael Barbarita of Next Step CFO and moderator Chuki Obiyo.